We are live now. You can start.
Okay. Good evening and a warm welcome to you all. I'm your host, Nipamani Kolita, bringing you all another webinar session with Art and Craft with Anna Jury. Before I begin, here's a brief about us, the team Anna Jury, to our new audiences who are with us in this beautiful evening today. Anna Jury means the bond of love. It signifies unconditional love. And it is this bond of unconditional love for his native land that brought back Malin Datta, the founder of Anajuri, from the USA to start a non-profit organization in 2018 who engages and promotes various initiatives that are striving for social change, honing leadership skills, and building entrepreneurship capabilities in the Northeast, including Assam. For the past few months, we have been engaging with speakers from various fields via virtual media to create a network among the people working in the region. And coming back to today's topic, do journalists need bulletproof jackets? And to the speaker, and here Teresa Rehman ma'am, our speaker, is with us. She is known for her quiet grit and matter-of-fact approach to the stories. Sorry for the issue. Continuing. Okay, sorry for the issue. Continuing. She is known for her quiet grit and matter-of-fact approach to stories. She is an award-winning journalist based in Northeast India. She has worked for years toward bringing the different facets of the region, its diversity and distinct ethos to mainstream media. She has done a series of stories on climate change for Reuters and the Third Pole. Her work in journalism spans through India Today, Telegraph, and Talca before she decided to put in all her resources into launching the Thumb print e-magazine that she edits currently. She has managed to bring in a gender perspective to her stories. A recipient of the Vast Media Awards 2009 to 2010. She also won the Ramant Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for 2 consecutive years, 2008 to 2009 and 2009 to 2010 for the category. And here we introduce our ma'am, Teresa Rehman ma'am. So you can give a small brief about you.
Thank you, Nipamani. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, so I think you have already introduced me. Why don't you tell me something about yourself? Are you a student? What are you doing?
I'm a student of Masters in Women's Studies in Guwahati University. I'm pursuing Masters in Guwahati University.
Okay. And is it a 2-year program?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a 2-year program, Women's Studies?
Can you increase your volume, ma'am?
Am I not audible?
You are audible, but your sound is very low.
Now? Am I clear now?
A little bit more.
Now? Am I clear now?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me? I'm loud and clear? Right. Okay. Okay, so ask me. You had some questions, so you can ask me.
Okay. Okay, going to the questions. How did you get into journalism?
Okay. See, Nipamani, I started very young. In fact, I started dreaming about journalism very young. I started as a child, and I used to write in the children's corner of the local dailies, and that got me going. And my mother had a collection of magazines and books. There's a lot of noise at your end, Nipa. Yeah. Okay. So my mother had a lot of magazines, and I used to go through those magazines, and I was like, and I used to read the Superman comics. In Superman, there is the Superman in real life was a journalist. He used to work for a newspaper called the Daily Planet. So these kind of things, somehow it stirred my imagination, and I used to imagine myself as a journalist, though there are no journalists in the family. Like my parents were, my mother was a teacher, my father was an engineer. And there was no journalist in the family. I never met a real life, a journalist in my real life. It's just that, I was fascinated by this whole idea of, seeing my name in print. And I started off by writing in the local dailies, the Children's Corner. And then gradually, I pursued my, I pursued print journalism at the Indian Institute of Mass Communication, which is under the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. It's in New Delhi. And it was a very tough course to get through. It was an all India entrance. It still is. And now there are many centers of the IIMC, Indian Institute of Mass Communication. But then back then, there were only two centers, one in New Delhi and one was in Orissa, Dhenkanal. So I did my print, I specialized in print media, and I did my internship in the Indian Express, and there I really explored. That was in Delhi, and I did a lot of stories for the campus pages, and then gradually, and then I joined India Today magazine as a trainee reporter and as a trainee journalist. And that was the time when I think that was the turning point. I met some of the finest journalists of the country in India Today magazine. And in those days, there was a saying that there are two kind of journalists in the country: those who worked for India Today and those who didn't work for India Today. So I consider myself very privileged that I could start my career with India Today magazine. And then, I had to come back to Guwahati because of some domestic constraints. My mother was very ill. And I joined the Telegraph newspaper. I was I used to handle the features, the Telegraph Northeast. And after that, I joined Tehelka magazine. And for Tehelka, I covered the entire Northeast, which is a conflict-torn region. And after that, after quitting Tehelka, I thought I would, write about the Northeast, about the common people of the Northeast in, I call them the so-called national media, because if you pick up any, so-called mainstream newspaper, there's very few, news about, there's very less news about the Northeast. So after a point when I had to struggle to find space for my stories in those so-called national newspapers or magazines, I was very angry. As a very angry reaction, I started the Thumbprint magazine. It's an online magazine, and it's my baby. And the Thumbprint is, I call it an international magazine with a Northeastern soul. So way back in 2000, so this magazine is going, it's still my, we try to uh, explore the different stories that are floating around in the Northeast. And I often call the region paradise for journalists, because there's so many stories waiting to be told. And we wanted Thumbprint to be a credible space where we could tell our stories. And believe it or not, it's been, nobody's ever refused to write for us, So I think that's a privilege we enjoy. And yeah, that's about it. I guess the journey is still on. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What qualities do you think makes a good journalist?
Okay. Well, I think to be a good journalist, you have to keep your ears and eyes open. You have to be really grounded. And I still believe that, nowadays you say there's a lot of modern media, a lot of new gadgets have come up, a lot of new technology has come into media. Media has changed. The media ecosystem is changing rapidly. But I still believe that, the cardinal principles of shoe leather journalism, where you have to go to the ground and find the story and to be able to report objectively, these are things that will stand the test of time, and they will always survive. And so to be a good journalist, you have to be grounded, you have to explore, and you have to be curious, and you have to be sensitive, especially in a region like the northeast of India, which has seen several decades of violent insurgency. It's very important that you be sensitive, and you are empathetic, and you understand the socio-cultural and geographical and the political realities of the region, and you you are ready to engage with all kind of people and not be biased. So I think, and if you I don't know if you know Ernest Hemingway, the famous writer. He was a war correspondent too, and these are things that will stand the test of time. Like we still talk about some good journalists, we still talk about some good authors. So um, journalism is not about just glitz and glamour, and um, I feel that you really need to have that urge. You have to be passionate about your work. Like for me, I'm very passionate about my work, so I don't feel that I am overburdened with work. I love working. I love exploring. So there's so much to do. So new technology is just a means. Now from say the print newspaper, people are turning to mojo, mobile journalism. So mobile journalism is something which recently I was in the syllabus making committee of Rajiv Gandhi University in Arunachal Pradesh, and they were starting a new course on mobile journalism. And I said that, yeah, in fact, mobile journalism can be the game changer, because a peripheral state like Arunachal Pradesh, which is never in the news, in the so-called, if you switch on your television sets or the newspapers, and you'll hardly find any news from Arunachal Pradesh or Tripura, for example, or Mizoram. So for them, I think it's this whole thing about mobile journalism, where you just carry a mobile phone and a mic, that can be the game changer. You'll be able to tell local stories, and you'll be able to tell hyper local stories, go deep, and people can tell their stories. So these are things which are evolving, and especially in a place like Northeast India, media is, we have a very prolific media, but it's still evolving, and but still, there's certain qualities that a journalist should possess. Will this will never go out of fashion, you see. So I hope I've been able to answer your question.
Yeah, it's going smooth. You're
Okay.
answering smoothly. Okay, now I want to know about your book named Bulletproof, and why do you name the book Bulletproof?
Okay. So actually, I'm part of an organization, a group of women in media from the South Asian countries, and it is known as SOM, South Asia Women in Media, where we have women journalists from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Maldives, all the South Asian countries. And we had our first regional conference once. And when we were sitting there and we were discussing, there was a session on reporting from a conflict zone. And a very senior journalist from Pakistan, Mariana Babar, she was saying that, women going to the field and directly reporting conflict is something new to this generation, especially in South Asia. So we were discussing the nuances of reporting conflict. And then the moderator, she asked me, do you wear a bulletproof jacket when you go reporting? And that was around 10 years back. And I was very young then. And for me, it was a revolution. I was quite surprised that I didn't know before that that bulletproof jackets for journalists actually existed. And that is why I decided to write about my experiences. And later I got to know that most foreign media, when they send their reporters on the field, like for instance CNN or BBC, when they send their reporters to cover conflict or even to cover a disaster, they are given a specialized training called HEFAT, hostile environment and first aid training. So they're trained to handle situations in case anything happens to them, first aid, or in case they are kidnapped, how do they handle it? And so these kind of trainings, we never got these kind of trainings. We went to the field with just a pen and a notebook. And so that was very rudimentary. And so this is why I call this, I have my book with me, I call it Bulletproof. I'm trying to say that we journalists in the Northeast are bulletproof. We are bulletproof. We've never cared for our own personal safety. And when I'm talking about safety, it's not just physical safety. I'm also talking about my psychological health, my mental health. When I report conflict, the trauma that I undergo as a journalist, that is something we never talk about. And nowadays, we have a lot of new challenges like digital safety, taking care of our gadgets, taking care of our phone, taking care of the laptop, and dealing with online trolling, online abuse. So these kind of new challenges that are coming up. And so basically, it is a journalist notebook on reporting conflict. And I talk about how I myself, I'm bulletproof. And so are all the journalists reporting from the different states in the Northeast with basic tools and no such specialized training whatsoever. So that is why I call it bulletproof.
Yeah, I think journalists have the power, a power in the sense of pain.
Pardon?
If I'm not wrong.
I didn't get you.
Journalists have the power. Journalists are very powerful. I mean to say, their power are in pens.
Okay.
If I'm not wrong.
The pen is mightier than the sword. Yeah. Okay. Fine. But still, there are challenges because if you see the Northeast of India, many journalists have been killed, injured or maimed, or newspaper offices have been shut down, especially when we're talking about Mizoram, Manipur and Nagaland. Bombs have been hurled at newspaper offices. So it's a very challenging task, and journalists most often are very poorly paid. And so these are and there is no safety net or support system for a journalist. There is no mechanism in place where a journalist can say, if you end up in a legal tangle, how you don't have a team of lawyers to help you. It's a very lonely journey, when you do stories, and then if it affects your own mental health, there is no support system. Like, I had a friend who was the associate editor of the Arunachal Times, Tongam Rina. She was shot at while she was entering her office, and she was undergoing deep post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, and she had to. There was an organization in Germany which helped her. She stayed in Germany for 1 year. So, these kind of support systems for a journalist are not there. And forget about this kind of support systems. When I'm talking about basic things, like, say, for instance, in a newspaper, in a media house, how many media houses in the Northeast they do they have a separate toilet for women, or do they have provisions for maternity leave? So when you look at the gender angle to it, so so there are a lot of challenges. It's not a glamorous thing that appears apparently, but yeah, so the pen is mightier, but it's a lot of thorns on the way.
Yeah. Okay. How do you look at stories with a gender lens?
See, this is something which I do very consciously. I try to, when I go reporting, I try to see if there is if I see a lady standing in the corner and she's quiet, I ask her, tell me, why are you quiet? What is your problem? And when you talk to the women, you get the real stories. Be it a story about water, sanitation, hygiene, or some conflict, some violence. It's the women who are the worst affected. And when you talk to these women, you get the real stories. So this is a very conscious thing that I do. I ask them, where are the women? Call them. Where are your toilets? Show it to me. Where is your water coming from? So these are things which I do consciously. And when you talk about, say, you pick up a newspaper and you see, if you look at the political pages, you'll feel that, oh, women, there are hardly any women politicians. Yes. Look at the economics pages, you'll see, oh, it's men are handling money. Yeah. Look at the agriculture pages, you'll see, well, women farmers, do they exist? Mm-hmm. So these are the things that, look at the sports pages. If there is an exceptional, somebody's won a gold medal, otherwise, it's just a very male thing, very masculine. So this is a conscious thing that I do. I try to understand what's missing. These are the stories that are missing. So I want to make sure that I don't miss out on those things. So this is the way I try to be very, very, very sensitive, very, very, very careful, very, very empathetic, and try to understand. Even when you talk about health, the health stories, what are the stories that are missing? When you talk about women's health, you find only stories about motherhood and child care, as if a woman's life ends with motherhood. So what about the other problems of the uterus? Do we ever talk about it? What about say, the cervical cancer, or different problems like endometriosis, ovaries, you have so many things, so many problems nowadays, but these are never spoken about or discussed in the public domain. Or what about menopause? I mean, once I remember I did a story on menopause for when I was working for a news organization, and the editor was so embarrassed. He did not want to, he just spiked the story. He didn't, he was not even ready to listen to me. He was too embarrassed to discuss menopause with me. So I think these are the things which, and I have reported conflict extensively. So whenever I went to a militant camp, I asked them, where are your women? And and I think they also feel very awkward when they see a woman journalist approaching them, talking to them. So whenever I've been to a militant camp, I have they have their women cadres around me. They come and maybe just to make me feel comfortable or make themselves feel comfortable. So there are various nuances that you have to understand, and I make it a conscious decision to look at things from the angles which has not been looked at. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Now please tell us something about the awards that you have won. Do I have told a little?
Well, I have won, I think, quite a lot of them, and I've won the Ramnath Goenka Excellence in Journalism Award for reporting Northeast for 2 consecutive years, and then the Ladli Media Award for Gender Sensitivity, the Sanskriti Award for Excellence in Journalism, the 7th Sarojini Naidu Prize for Best Reporting on Women and Panchayati Raj by the Hunger Project. And I think that's about it. So, well, awards, they give you a sense of, a sense of satisfaction that maybe you have done your job well. But one award that I really want to think, I feel good, is the Wash Media Award. It is given for writing on water, sanitation, and hygiene issues by the Stockholm Water Institute. Stockholm Water Institute. So the Wash Media Award was, in fact, that's also a good example of how you can do, there are stories lying in your backyard. Like this is a story about my domestic help. I tried to explore how they because she lived in a village which is close to the river Jia Bhoroli, and her village is flooded during the rainy season. So, and otherwise it's a very clean village. So they have their own toilets, Swachh Bharat toilets and all. So I asked them, when the whole village gets flooded, what happens to your toilets? So, oh, they get flooded. So then how do you defecate? So that, what she told me was a horror story. She said that we make a raft out of the stem of a banana tree, and we row the raft, and at night, of course, because we have this sense of shame. So, and we try to look for a dry spot where we can defecate. And this lady was telling me that, she was a widow. So that was for her, to be able to find a man to row the raft for her was another problem. So she said that, she was, they would take this raft, and once, she came back and she saw her whole sari was blood stained because a leech stuck on her buttocks. So I wrote this story, and for this story, I got an international award. That is the Wash Media Award. And I got this award in the, it's usually given in the World Water Week in Stockholm. But I couldn't go there because I was expecting my second daughter then. I couldn't fly. So I received the award in the World Conference of Science Journalists, which was held in Doha, in Qatar. That's what I said, you have to be very grounded if you want to be a good journalist.
Journalist, yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay,
when your department, Women's Studies, do you also explore media and how media addresses women's issues?
sorry?
In your department, Women's Studies, do you also explore how media looks at women, or how women is how media addresses the women's issues? Do you do that in your department?
Sorry, I'm not aware about.
Okay. Okay. Is it not a part of your curriculum? Your syllabus?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, fine.
Okay, there's a question from Rashmi ma'am. What are the biggest challenges you face while reporting an intricate story?
I don't know what you mean by an intricate story. Every story has intricate details. But maybe if you're talking about a difficult story, yeah, Rashmi, what are you?
Basically, I wanted to know when you there are stories which are obviously all stories are intricate in itself, but I want to know, like, there are certain kind of stories which is really thought provoking, or sometimes it may even lead to journalists being the target, or they are being pointed out, or they are being criticized, or it can be any level. So how do you actually deal in such kind of cases?
See, I did a very difficult story. That was, I had exposed a fake encounter in Manipur.
Okay.
And that was published in Tehelka magazine. And that story, in fact, led to a civil uprising in Manipur. And the aftermath of the story, the impact that it had on me as a journalist was very, I think I've written in my book, my book Bulletproof, and I've written about how, because of this lack of support system on the ground, journalist is, left in the lurch. And like I was questioned by the CBI, the SIT, the Judicial Commission, and I still answer court summons because I was a witness in the story. So that was a very difficult phase of my life. And I was also heavily pregnant then. I was expecting my second daughter, and to be able to handle all that, and if you I must tell you this, that reporting conflict can spring surprises in every step. There may be things that had happened to you which are unprecedented. Probably it has happened to me, but it might never happen to anyone else. So that is another reason why I thought that I should write this book, where I talk about the challenges that a journalist faces. And in fact, this story also exposed me to the psychological trauma of a journalist. It was a very traumatic experience for me. So these are things which now people have started talking about, that as journalists, if you feel that you are stressed, take a break, try to take some counseling, try to get help, make some friends, do something, cultivate a hobby, or go on a holiday or something, where it's not, like this book is also more of a, it's a, like a I've written this in retrospect. Like I'm trying to analyze my reporting experiences and try to understand, maybe this could help someone a budding journalist, who's preparing to report conflict, that, be prepared. Like I always had this thing called a grab bag. In my bag had a lot of things in it, right from, if I had to stay back somewhere overnight, basic things, and even a packet of biscuits and water, and this grab bag is so important for a journalist. And medicines, some medicines, and if you're a woman, some sanitary pads as well. So it's a new experience every day, reporting conflict. And so so I never went prepared. I was too young then. I didn't realize that. But now things have changed. People people are talking about safety of journalists, and people are talking about the mental health of the journalist as well. So yeah,
So do you I mean, how do you overcome, this is like asking the same question in relation to the previous one. So how do you actually, I mean, what advice would you like to give to the youngsters who would like to pursue a career like in journalism? Because there are a lot of ups and downs in this line of business, and we do see that sometimes I have a friend who is again a journal who's an editor, and sometimes she goes through a lot of high and low, because maybe what she's trying to put forward is not being accepted, and there is definitely a conflict between the writer and the publisher. So what would you suggest or advise these youngsters who would like to pursue a career in journalism?
see, these kind of challenges are everywhere, conflict in office, etc., etc. That is that can happen to even a banker or an IS officer or a journalist. Yeah. But to be a good journalist, I feel that I talk to a lot of media students, and I tell them that try to understand your society. If you're reporting from the Northeast, at least try to understand the geography, the problems there, the sociological problems, the cultural problems, the linguistic, ethnic problems, and be very sensitive and be objective, and try to get all sides of the story, and go prepared, and you should be able to handle any kind of crisis. And in fact, I also call myself a survivor. Like, I have been in tough spots. I've been to Nagaland. I've been to the camp of the NSC and IM, and I was even caught in a crossfire then. But maybe I'm lucky that I survived. There are many journalists who don't make it, and they end up as mere statistics. So in that sense, I am a survivor to tell my story. I've survived to tell my story. So I've written this book called Bulletproof, and I hope it serves as some kind of a guidebook for journalists, budding journalists and media students. And I think media schools in the Northeast, they should, I think it should be mandatory to have a paper on conflict journalism, because there's conflict everywhere here. And we've seen several decades of violent insurgency. And you cannot but, if you're a journalist, you have to be in the thick of things. So you cannot, play it safe all the time. So I think it's very important to incorporate these kind of issues in the curriculum of media schools. Media schools, I see most of them are very, it's more of a glamour oriented, people want to be just, they want to be on television, and they want to, but it's not, journalism is not just that. Journalism, if you want to be a good journalist, if you want to be remembered for your work, you have to get your hands dirty. And and there are a lot of organizations nowadays which help journalists if they are in trouble, and we should be just aware of what are the different ways in which you'll be able to come out of it and get your story. That is also very important.
True.
Mhm.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Is there when you want to become a journalist, is there any particular writing style you need to follow, or you can just be, on your own and go ahead with it? I mean, you know.
Every actually every media house have their style. They have a style sheet as well. We'll use this, we'll not use this, but there's certain things which are very basic, that when you write about a sensitive issue, what do you write, how do you address it?
Correct.
These are the ways of how to go about it. And I remember I was a student of English literature, and the first thing that we were asked to read was the Bible, because English literature, which we studied, was full of biblical allusions. So I feel that a media student should study, it should be made mandatory that the Constitution of India should be made a part of the curriculum of media schools. They have to read, you have to know what's there in your Constitution. You have to, I also feel a background in political science or history is more useful than, just doing a technical journalism, thing, because journalism is not anyone can handle the camera. That is, you're not a technician. You have to bring out a story that might change somebody's life, and a story that would help policymakers make changes. And it might not be read by someone, by everyone around you, but maybe somebody in the PMO is reading it. Maybe the policymakers, the planning commission is reading it. So it's very important that we get our voice across. And nowadays I've seen something very interesting thing that we see in the Northeast now. Earlier, there's a funny thing also, that earlier there were a lot of PCOs. So somebody starts a PCO, and everyone starts a PCO in the neighborhood. So now we have these news portals. There's a joke that every family will have a news portal now. So jokes apart, I feel that it's a very important development, especially in an underreported region like the Northeast of India, where you have so many news portals and in so many languages, in different ethnicities, different ethnic groups are telling their stories through these portals. And you're getting hyper local news. Like recently, I was just going through one of the portals, and I saw there was this news about the inauguration of a pharmacy. The news about an inauguration of a pharmacy.
Okay.
So I was just I was just watching it, and I was trying to understand that a pharmacy is so important in certain locations where there is no doctor, where there is no hospital nearby. That pharmacy can be such an important point for a community. So and that journalist felt that it was important to tell the story about the inauguration of a pharmacy. And he went on and on. It was like, you'll get this kind of medicines here, so and so doctors will come from the city and will look at your problems. So I found that very fascinating. These are things which we never get to see in so-called national media, or this small hyper local news, which is so important. That is coming through because of these news portals. So I think that's a very, but people also complain that these news portals are creating a lot of nuisance. But then, we should be, media literate enough. We should be literate enough to be able to filter what is good, what is bad. And, if there is something that you find very disturbing, you can always complain. You can complain to the Press Council of India or the National Broadcasting Authority of India. There are certain bodies where you can, or even write a letters to the editor. Don't be a mute spectator and just keep blaming the media for everything. Media doesn't work in isolation. Media is part of the society. So, you have to understand that. So try to understand media, try to be media literate. And I think media literacy courses should start in the school level itself now. And especially with social media, new media, things are changing at such a fast pace. But I still maintain that the basic cardinal rules of journalism, objectivity and truth and, sensitivity, they will stand the test of time. Shoe leather, the basic rules of shoe leather journalism. You have to go to the field and get your hands dirty.
Thank you very much. I wanted to know about your book, but I think I've covered a lot of things. So let Nipani, please, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Okay. Being a survivor doing journalism, do you ever take any safety precautions, or do you have ever think of it, taking it?
No, I said that. No, I never thought about it. But now in retrospect, I think about it, that I just went with my pen and my notebook and, and I'm lucky that I survived. But yeah, I think
Nowadays, is it
Yeah.
required?
I mean, it's always important that you stay safe. No story is worth your life. So, and safety is at different levels, as I said again and again, that it's not just physical safety, it's your psychological health, it's your digital safety, your gadgets should be safe. Safety is at different levels now. And so you just be careful, but then, you can't be too careful that you can't get your story right. You can't play it safe all the time. So yeah, but just be careful. That's what I tell journalists.
Yeah. Do you think Sue leader journalism will stand the taste of time?
Yeah, that's what I've been saying, advocating for shoe leather journalism all the time. It will stand the test of time. There's no doubt about it. Technology will come, technology will go, new technology. Now, technology is changing at such a fast pace. New modern gadgets will come. But what are you doing with the technology is important. Okay. So there'll be many news portals, but some news portals will stand the test of time. People will remember them. So, the rest will just fizzle away. So poor quality, you cannot compromise on the quality of news, quality of media, quality of journalism. Yes, I agree that a lot of, dirt has come into journalism, but then what will stand the test of time is correct, factual, sensitive journalism, good journalism, what we call good journalism, that will survive the test of time.
Okay, so we almost came to an end to our session. We have gathered enough information from you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Teresa, thank you for being with us today and, taking out time to actually grace this webinar from Anna Jury's side. Nipamani as well as me, we really shower our gratitude towards you for coming up today. And also, I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
So I think we can end the meet, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon.
See you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.